$3,000 after tax every month. That is your entire budget for rent, food, transportation, entertainment, internet, phone, insurance, and savings. Not a cent more. Now, ask yourself a very dangerous question. Where in Canada can you actually live on that? If you live in Vancouver or Toronto, you already know the answer. You cannot. Not comfortably. Not without a second job, a roommate, or a slow-burning anxiety that follows you to bed every single night. But if you open TikTok or Instagram, you will see a completely different story. 20-somethings in Calgary showing off brand new 2-bedroom apartments for $1,500. Young families in Halifax eating lobster on a patio while paying $200 for a renovated Victorian flat. Same country, same dollar amount, wildly different lives. And here is the trap that most people fall into. They look at average rent prices. They glance at a cost of living calculator, and they think they understand the difference. But they do not, because the difference between Toronto, Halifax, and Calgary is not just $500 here or $800 there. The difference is the entire structure of your life. Today, we are going to break down exactly what $3,000 a month buys you in 3 very different Canadian cities. We will follow 3 real people, not statistics. Real humans with real bank accounts, real stress, and real trade-offs. And by the end of this video, you will never look at a $3,000 paycheck the same way again. Let us start with the city that everyone is fleeing, the city that makes $3,000 feel more like $1,500. Toronto. Meet Sarah. She is 28 years old. She works in marketing for a mid-sized tech firm. Her take-home pay is exactly $300 to $100 per month after taxes and a small employer-matched RRSP deduction. On paper, she is a professional. In reality, her life is a masterclass in financial survival. First, rent. Sarah lives in a 1-bedroom apartment near Dufferin and Bloor. Not downtown, not a luxury building. Just an older walk-up with shared laundry in the basement. Her rent is $2,100 per month. That leaves her with $900 for absolutely everything else. Already, you see the problem. She spends $120 on her phone and internet, another $60 on tenant insurance and basic streaming services. Her Metro Pass for the TTC costs $156. She is now down to $564. Groceries in Toronto are not cheap. She shops at no frills. She buys no name brands. She eats mostly chicken, rice, frozen vegetables, and oatmeal. That still costs her roughly $300 per month. She has $264 left. Now here is where the myth falls apart. Sarah does not go out to fancy dinners. She does not buy $7 lattes. She packs her lunch. She pre-drinks before meeting friends at a dive bar. She has not bought new clothes in 4 months. And still, after one modest dinner out, one haircut, and a single Uber home when the TTC stops running, she is scraping the bottom of her checking account with 7 days left in the month. She has no savings, no emergency fund. She has not contributed to her TFSA in over a year. And when her dentist told her she needed a $400 filling, she had to put it on a credit card that is already carrying a $2,200 balance. Here is the most painful part. Sarah is not bad with money. She tracks every dollar. She does not drink Starbucks. She meal preps on Sundays. Toronto has simply made surviving on $3,000 a month impossible, unless you are willing to live in a basement apartment with 2 roommates, eat rice and beans for every meal, and never ever have an unexpected expense. Sarah is 28 years old. She is doing everything right, and she is still one broken laptop away from financial disaster. So what happens when you take the exact same $3,000 and move 2,000 kilometers east? Halifax. Meet Megan. She is 30 years old. She works remotely for a company based in Ontario that pays her the same salary regardless of where she lives. Her take-home pay is $3,050 per month, almost identical to Sarah, but her life looks nothing like Sarah's. First, rent. Megan rents a 2-bedroom apartment in the north end of Halifax, not the suburbs, not a basement. A real apartment with hardwood floors, tall ceilings, and a small balcony. Her rent is $1,400 per month. That is $700 less than Sarah pays in Toronto. Immediately, the math changes. She now has $1,650 left for everything else. Internet and phone cost her roughly the same, $110. Her power bill is higher in the winter because of electric baseboards. Average is $90 per month across the year. No TTC pass because Halifax does not have a subway. She walks most places, buses when it rains, spends about $50 on transit and $80 on occasional Ubers. She is now at $1,320 for the month. Groceries in Halifax are actually slightly more expensive than Toronto for some items. Produce has to be trucked in, but meat and dairy can be cheaper locally. She spends about $340 on food. She has $980 left. Now here is where the fantasy becomes real. Megan does not just survive, she lives. She goes out for dinner and drinks twice a week. She bought a new winter coat last month without checking her bank account first. She takes a pottery class on Wednesdays that costs $90 a month. She is saving $400 per month into her TFSA, which is invested in a simple S&P 500 index fund. But here is the catch, and this is important. Megan is not rich. She is not even close to rich. She still rents. She does not own a car. Her furniture is from IKEA and Facebook Marketplace. If she lost her remote job tomorrow, Halifax does not have nearly as many high-paying marketing roles as Toronto. She would likely have to take a 30 or 40% pay cut. So yes, $3,000 goes much further in Halifax, but the city also pays less. The average salary is lower, the career ladder is shorter, the ceiling is closer. Now let us bring in the city that cost of living YouTube videos cannot stop talking about. Calgary. Meet Derek. He is 32 years old. He works in office administration for an energy services company. His take-home pay is $3,200 per month, slightly higher because Alberta has no provincial sales tax and slightly lower income tax rates compared to Nova Scotia and Ontario. But Derek's real advantage is not the tax, it is the structure of the city. He rents a brand new one-bedroom apartment in the Beltline neighborhood, which is walking distance to downtown, restaurants, bars, and the Saddle Dome. His rent is $550, but his unit has air conditioning, in-suite laundry, a gym, and a rooftop patio. The same unit in Toronto would cost over $2,500. He now has $650 left, similar to Megan. But Calgary changes the game on transportation. Derek owns a car, a 2018 Honda Civic he bought used for $16,000. His insurance is $140 per month because Alberta has private insurance and rates are higher than people expect. Gas is cheaper, roughly $1.30 per liter compared to $1.60 in Halifax. He spends about $120 on gas and $80 on parking. Total transportation costs roughly $340. He now has $110. Groceries in Calgary are noticeably cheaper on some items. Dairy, beef, eggs, far cheaper than both Toronto and Halifax because the farms are close. He spends $300 on food. He has $1,010 left. Now here is where Derek pulls ahead. He is saving aggressively. He puts $500 per month into his TFSA, another $300 into an FHSA because he wants to buy a townhouse in 2 years. And he still has $210 left for entertainment, clothes, and random life expenses. But do not romanticize Calgary. The winters are brutal. The city is sprawling and car-dependent. The job market is heavily tied to oil and gas, which means boom and bust cycles. And while Derek feels comfortable now, he also knows that a $3,000 budget in Calgary today could feel like $2,000 if energy prices crash and landlords start raising rents again. So let us pause and look at the raw math side by side because this is where most cost of living comparisons stop. And that is exactly where they fool you. In Toronto, after rent and basic utilities, a person earning $3,000 a month has roughly $550 left for food, transportation, savings, and life. In Halifax, they have roughly $1,300. In Calgary, roughly $1,300 to $400, depending on whether they own a car. On paper, Halifax and Calgary look almost identical, but that is the lie. Because the difference between Halifax and Calgary is not in the monthly surplus. It is in what that surplus can actually do for you. In Halifax, housing prices have exploded in the last 3 years. A townhouse that cost $280,000 in 2020 now costs $480,000. Rents have doubled in some neighborhoods. The city is being discovered by remote workers from Ontario and BC, and locals are being priced out. So while Megan lives well on $3,000 today, she is terrified of what her rent will be next year. In Calgary, the opposite story. Rents have remained relatively stable. New apartment buildings are going up constantly because the city approves development quickly. Derek's landlord cannot raise his rent by 20% overnight the way they can in Ontario or Nova Scotia because Alberta does not have rent control, but the supply is so high that landlords compete for tenants. Calgary gives you stability. Halifax gives you lifestyle but uncertainty. Toronto gives you neither. Now let me introduce you to something most financial influencers will never admit. $3,000 a month is not a poverty wage. It is not a rich wage either. It is a middle wage in a country that has quietly made the middle unlivable in its biggest cities. According to Statistics Canada, the median after-tax income for a single person in this country was roughly $35,000 in 2022. That is about $2,900 per month. So $3,000 a month is almost exactly the Canadian median. It is statistically normal. And yet, in Toronto, that normal income buys a life of quiet desperation. In Halifax, it buys comfort with anxiety. In Calgary, it buys breathing room. So which city is actually the best? That is the wrong question. I am going to tell you the real question. The real question is not where can you survive on $3,000 a month. The real question is where can you build wealth on $3,000 a month? Because surviving and building are completely different games. In Toronto, you cannot build. You can tread water. You can hope your salary goes up 10% next year. You can pray your landlord does not rent evict you. But you cannot save $500 a month consistently for a decade. The math does not allow it. In Halifax, you can build slowly. You can contribute to your TFSA. You can take a vacation once a year. You can afford a modest emergency fund. But you are one rent increase away from losing that surplus. In Calgary, you can actually build. You can save for a down payment. You can invest in the stock market. You can buy a used car in cash. You can take risks. And that ability to build, that is the difference between being middle class and feeling middle class. Let me leave you with a prediction. Over the next 5 years, you are going to see a massive migration. Not just out of Toronto and Vancouver, but out of Ontario entirely. Young professionals are going to realize that $3,000 a month in Toronto is a life sentence, while $3,000 a month in Calgary or Edmonton or Winnipeg or Saskatoon is a life. And the cities that win that migration, Calgary, Halifax, even Moncton, they will change. Rents will rise, salaries will slowly adjust, the cost of living advantage will erode. That is inevitable. So the real financial hack is not moving to the cheapest city today. It is moving to the city where your specific career can grow while you keep your expenses low. Because a $3,000 budget in Halifax is great until you lose your remote job. A $3,000 budget in Calgary is sustainable long-term if you can build a local career that pays $5,000 a month in 5 years. Toronto is for people who want to chase high incomes at the cost of everything else. Halifax is for people who want a beautiful life but are willing to accept less career upside. Calgary is for people who want boring, predictable, affordable stability with room to actually get ahead. There is no right answer. There is only the answer that matches your risk tolerance, your career, and your version of a good life. But here is what I want you to do after this video ends. Open your bank account, look at your monthly take-home pay, and ask yourself honestly, not where you want to live, not where your friends live, but where your money would actually work for you. Because $3,000 a month is not a small amount of money. It is a median income. And if you are earning the median but living like you are poor, the problem is not you. The problem is your postal code. If this video made you think differently about where you live, hit that subscribe button. And if you want part 2 where we break down $5,000 a month in these same 3 cities, let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.